Thank you. I'm going to talk today briefly about critical care paramedic training in New South Wales, and I'm going to contrast an area where we use a lot of technology and another area where we don't, and briefly explain why that is. Now, I'd like to thank New South Wales Ambulance for letting me be here today and talk to you about our training, but also the Aeromedical Crewing Excellence Training Centre that you're going to see and hear quite a little bit about. And also I'm doing a bit of double duty this week because I'm also the Australian and New Zealand College of Paramedicine, because I'm also here representing ACP. Now, we know if you look at ambulance services around the world that they're quite different, and just because you've seen one doesn't mean you've seen another. And that's even more true with HEMS. It varies not only from country to country but from state to state. And it's interesting to look back at the history about how the services developed their HEMS systems. In New South Wales, ours reflects geography. So we have 7 HEMS bases within the state, and I do apologise to my ACT colleagues, but since your base is located within New South Wales, I do consider it as being within New South Wales. 9 helicopters online every shift, and you'll see there that the bases all go up and down the east coast of New South Wales. Now, like the rest of Australia, our population density lives along the coast, but there's 2 other features that reflect what we do in our role in HEMS. One is the coastline. So it's long, it's beautiful, but it can be rugged and dangerous as well. And the other feature is 100 kilometres inland, and that's the Great Dividing Range. The Blue Mountains in particular, just to the west of Sydney, is beautiful, but yet it's rugged and it's isolated, and it attracts a lot of people to venture into it with adventure activities these days. And what that's done over the last 30 to 40 years has meant that our HEMS system got its origins in search and rescue, and that's stayed with us through to today. We undertake a role that other emergency services don't take, possibly could, but because we've always been doing it. Now in New South Wales, our standard crewing is a team of 4, and what's good about that crewing is that the same crew, the same pilot, air crewman, paramedic and doctor, complete any mission that comes in on a shift. Whether that's a high-end inter-hospital transfer of a patient on an intra-aortic balloon pump, or whether it's going and winching someone off a vessel at sea, that same 4-person crew will do all that. They'll do that mission. And because of that, we train together a lot. Now, roughly, we do about 45% of our workload as an inter-hospital transfer. Another 45% is pre-hospital or primary missions. And 10% of our work is what we call the search and rescue work, or the SAR work. Now, like with a lot of things in paramedicine, we spend a large amount of our time training for the 10% of our workload. And I am going to talk to you briefly about 2 areas of critical care paramedic training and focus on them. Just for a bit of terminology, in New South Wales, critical care paramedic refers to a HEMS paramedic, and it just differentiates us from our intensive care paramedics. If you want to be a critical care paramedic, you go through 5 phases of training, and I'm going to focus on phases 3 and 4, what we call our remote area access course and our aviation training. And I'm going to do that because it will contrast our use of technology in training, how we achieve high fidelity, how we make our training real. The remote area access course is approximately 6 weeks long, and even though we have played with and looked at where we could do our training, we spend most of our time out in the real world, out in the Blue Mountains. We could train in rock climbing centres, we could train indoors, but we actually find that being on the natural vertical surfaces, being exposed to the weather and the elements, actually brings out better performance in our students. As you move on through the course from looking after yourself in remote areas and on rope, you then start to rescue people, and during the vertical rescue phase, we haven't found anything better to replicate rescuing someone on a vertical surface than actually moving a live human load down that face. We also like to expose the students to extremes of height. The Blue Mountains are beautiful, but some of the cliffs are up to 300 metres tall. So during the course, as part of a graded approach to dealing with working at height, everyone participates in at least one 100-metre abseil of just a straight drop, with nothing to put your feet on, just have total faith in your rope and your equipment. And then later on, we like to really highlight the vastness and the committing nature of some of the work. Whether you're walking into a scene or getting winched into the bushland in the Canangra Boyd National Park where these paramedics are training, you need to be mindful that you're a long way from help should something go wrong. These 2 critical care paramedics are about to complete abseil 2 of 10 in a canyon that's going to take them over 8 hours to get to their patient. And when they get there, we've found that a live patient actor is actually better for us in this environment. And that's for a number of reasons, but one is that when you're providing patient care in a remote or austere environment, managing the environment, managing the environment that you're treated in is just as important as managing the chest injury or the limb injury. And we actually find that our live patient actors are much better able to replicate hypothermia, because they actually normally are by this stage pretty cold and tired and shivering themselves. And also, as one of the instructors that has to go in here, I don't particularly like the idea of carrying a high fidelity mannequin 8 hours into the bush. So our remote area access training, even though we've looked around, we do keep our eyes open for where we can integrate technology, it's mostly remained quite a low-tech environment. But we've been doing that in order to still be able to have as our goal being the most realistic in the training that we provide and be able to prepare people for the work that's ahead of them. Aviation, though, is different. We had a game-changing moment a couple of years ago in 2017. Prior to that point in time, all our training was, kind of like a lot of other places around the world, very much designed around the individual paramedic, the individual pilot, or the individual base. You did your training locally. Whenever you hired a new paramedic, you trained that paramedic without really thinking about the system. When we started our new aviation contracts in 2017, one of our partners, Toll, came together with New South Wales Ambulance and suggested a different way to train the HEMS crews in New South Wales. And that led to the development of what we call the ACETC, the Aeromedical Crew in Excellence Training Centre. And the ACE is now where every paramedic in the state, every pilot, air crewman and doctor in the southern half of the state comes to do not only their initial training, but their ongoing training as well.
Series 3000 simulator behind me is the premier CAE AW139 simulator in Australia, and it's used extensively in all of our training operations. Personally, I believe this simulator is one of the best in the world, specifically for the Australian region because of the database that it has, and it is the best training platform you could ever hope for to get people to the next level of safety in these operations.
The single biggest capability of CATS is its flexibility in training all crews. Pilots and air crewmen, paramedics and doctors can integrate everyone as a team, and we can throw any scenario at them that we like.
Drivers inboard and paramedics just securing the survivor, and you're clear to roll.
The Hewitt facility and the Sea Survival Training Centre that we have here in ACE is world class. The METS 30 allows us to simulate up to sea state 3 with wind and waves and inclement weather.
So we don't just tick a box. We don't do training just in flat water to go, okay, you'll be okay. We do the highest fidelity training we can possibly achieve to make sure our people do come home again.
So the ACE is a great facility, and we're still learning how to get the full potential out of it. It's got a number of great tools that need to be used at the right time to achieve the right learning objective. One of those is CATS, that you just saw a little bit of footage of. Now, this is our virtual reality trainer. This is where we get to sit in there and wear our VR headsets, but it's actually used to train some of our more low-tech aspects of it. It's actually our human factors trainer. We do it to make people make decisions and then explore those decisions, see how communication is amongst the crew, and then, where possible, get them to follow through on any decision they made. The crew here at the moment is managing a patient who's exsanguinating after stab wounds. They're flying them to a hospital as part of this scenario. They've arranged to go straight to the operating theatres. They're 15 minutes out from the major trauma service. Little does this medical team know that in about 1 minute's time, the aviation crew is going to start to deal with engine failure. In about 3 minutes, the aircraft's going to be making an emergency landing on the ground. And one of the key points here is to identify and watch and learn from how we communicate, how the medical team and the aviation team communicate, how they manage those competing priorities of looking after the aircraft, the crew, and the patient. We also like to explore some accepted norms. When the phone rings on base today, if I get tasked to go and get someone out of the water off Bondi Beach, it's quite a simple equation. Everyone else runs out to the aircraft, the paramedic starts getting changed and put their wetsuit on and walks out to the aircraft and jumps in and off we fly. We do that because that's the appropriate PPE for that job. We carry our water rescue gear in the aircraft with us every mission throughout the year that you go on, theoretically, so it's there should you get retasked to a water rescue. So one of the missions we've given all the paramedics is just that. They're flying back to base after an inter-hospital transfer, and then all of a sudden they get told that 4 minutes away there's a vessel sinking with people in the water. We know traditionally half the paramedics in that situation would decide to not get into their wetsuit because it might delay getting to the patient, and therefore they would do the water rescue in full flight suit. That has its own inherent risks, so we actually explored it, and anyone who elected to do the water rescue in their flight suit then later on that day found themselves spending a lot of time in the pool actually following through on that decision that they made. And the pool is next door. The aircraft didn't crash in that scenario, but the pool primarily was built for Hewitt. You've seen a little bit of footage about that. The main benefit we have of having our own Hewitt facility at the ACE is that we've configured the internals of it to exactly match the aircraft we fly on. And that's really important as a paramedic in particular, because the seat that I sit on in the back of the aircraft, when I'm secured in my harness, I cannot physically reach my emergency exit. So we've had to develop our own procedure of how I actually, when I'm inverted, underwater, release my harness, maintaining positive contact with the airframe to get to my emergency exit to get me out. We'd done Hewitt training for years with other providers, but had learned a procedure that wasn't going to work in our aircraft, in our seat. Hewitt, you love it or hate it, I love it. It brings fear into a lot of people's eyes. As a paramedic though, we only use the Hewitt facility for Hewitt once every 2 years. We use it though for our water rescue training, our rescue crewman role every 3 to 4 months. What we're able to do in that facility, as you saw, it has theatre. It's able to affect the lights, the sounds, the waves, the swell, the wind. But yet we're able to build up people with their training. We start off teaching them how to apply a strop and conduct water rescues with the lights on, the wind off, the sound down and the pool flat. And as they start to improve those skills, we then start to increase some wind, increase some wave, turn the lights off, turn the sound of the helicopter on. And then once they start to master that, we then start to give them presentations that they'll experience out there in the ocean. People floating around with life jackets on, people floating face down who are unconscious, people in life rafts. And what we've actually now been able to achieve is not only better training, having people better prepared to conduct water rescues, but we've also saved money. We used to do a water rescue flight for every paramedic twice a year. 50 of us around the state, roughly spending somewhere between 30 to 40 hours a year in the air, each flight, doing water rescues. We've cut that in half, and now we've replaced one of those flights with a 4-hour session in the pool. We did that initially as a trial, and after the first year we did it, we got great response from all the paramedics and the air crewmen, thinking that we've actually achieved a lot more than what we used to. Oops. Now, some of our simulators are really good for everyone. Some, it depends on the role you're completing in the aircraft. Here we've just got a simple recency requirement, a medical crew doing a hover entry-exit procedure. It's very common. And the realism here is pretty good for me. I'm stepping in and out of an aircraft that's a foot or two above the ground. But for the pilot, hovering 3 feet off the ground in an open area is not that challenging, and we're limited to where we can actually fly the aircraft to monitor our risk profiles during training. Luckily enough for the pilots, they've got the full flight simulator. Now this thing's amazing. I get to go in it every now and again, and when you do, and it crashes, which it does sometimes, and they let me in it, I flinch. I do get really immersed in it and forget that I'm actually in a simulator. The pilots, every hour they fly in this counts for an hour in a real aircraft. They can do their full endorsement on it. And what we've found is that it's now been key and crucial into how we bring pilots online in our contract. Now, every member of the crew, before they come online and treat real patients and do real missions, does what we call a holistic line check. It's a mission from start to finish. Tasking, response, mission planning, arrival on scene, patient care, extraction, transport to hospital. For paramedics and air crewmen, you actually fly that mission. It normally involves a lot of mission planning, involves a winch insertion, a stretcher winch extraction. But considering the training limitations we have to always fly in an environment where the weather's generally pretty good, in an area where we could drive to if something went wrong, the pilots don't get the same challenges out of that. But we've created missions here in the full flight simulator where they have to fly to jobs at 2 a.m. in the morning in really poor weather. And then they have to still be communicating with crews, the multiple inputs on the radios for them. And then just when everything's going swimmingly, normally one of the flight examiners will do something to them, like give them a major emergency to have to deal with. So in this situation, we've replaced, everyone else does their holistic line check as a real flight. The pilots get more out of using the simulator. We have still been aware, though, of our limitations. You've seen me talk about the benefits of the pool, and I wouldn't be surprised if in 5 years' time we don't fly any of our water rescue training flights at all. I think the pool could totally replace that. It hasn't done that for vessel transfers. Putting a paramedic onto a vessel or taking a paramedic or a patient off is a very challenging environment to simulate. You've got a boat moving forwards, you've got an aircraft moving forwards, and then you've got the boat coming up and down in the swell. And so we still go out and fly that training every year, as we always have. We just haven't found the right simulation equipment to get past that at the moment. So I'm going to leave you just by sharing, I suppose, the philosophy we have to training at the moment at the ACE. And it's probably quite a pragmatic one, and that is that wherever possible, wherever we can, we make use of technology. And we've found some great improvements in it, both in the training output we're able to get, as well as some cost savings. But we've also been very mindful that our end goal is realism in training, and that there is just as many cases where actually going out into the field, as opposed to being in our simulators, has achieved better results for us. Thank you.